Hey guys, it's Tiny Tom Logan back with another video for you. And today we can finally talk about what's been spoken about for quite some time, the Nvidia GTX680. Yes, they decided to call it the 680, not the 780, because the names and stuff have all been all over the place. So, the time is here for testing. I'm sure you want a good look at the card, but we're going to have to get some details out of the way first. And I've got the screen up to the left of the monitor so I can kind of remember this, because there's got a fair bit to remember. But basically, the basics are 1536 CUDA cores, 2 gig of memory, and it's got a weird kind of turbo mode on it. The stock clock is 1006 megahertz, so that's just over the gigahertz mark. If it wasn't for Nvidia, if it wasn't for AMD releasing the, I think it was the 7770 with 1000 megahertz on the core, the 680 would have been the first card to have been released out of the box with a gig on the core. So AMD just trumped them there, but we need to remember that this is one of the bigger end, the higher end cards. But we also need to remember that it's not necessarily the core speed that makes the difference, it's the architecture. But yeah, the turbo mode, it's got this auto flick up where it will go up to 1058 on the core. But the thing is something I want to say really early on, is when you overclock it, like an afterburner and stuff, if you move the clock up 25 megahertz, it sets the early clock up 25 megahertz. And then when it turbos, that then turbos up 25 megahertz more. So depending on what you overclock it, it sets the base clock, and then when the turbo clock's in, it still jumps the same amount forward. So it's not like you're adding extra to the just the turbo. So for example, if you added 100 onto the overclock, 100 megahertz, the base clock would move on at 100 megahertz, and then the turbo will still turbo the same amount, but obviously beyond that. So say I think it's like 50 something, I can't remember. It'll always go that little bit further with a turbo mode. It's kind of strange really, because you'd think that it would have just turboed, it'd stay at 1000 megahertz and you'd be overclocking turbo, but you're not. But anyway, what we're going to do is we're going to stick with how we normally lay these things out. I'm going to bring you in for a close look. Then we're going to do some testing. We need to cover the benchmarks, we need to cover some gaming, all that kind of stuff. So we're going to need to get all that out of the way, and then right at the end we'll talk about a conclusion, performance testing, you know, and wrap everything up basically. So get comfy, go get yourself a brew, go get yourself a biscuit. For all of the regulars, if you're new to one of my videos, get comfy. It's not going to be a 5-minute review. And then, yeah, make sure you stick around to the end for the conclusion. Right then, peeps. Our first up close look at the 680. It's Kepler. Oh. But one thing I will say straight away before we start looking around, giving it a good close look, until you get one of these in your hand, you can't really get a gist for how small it feels. When I first got it, as I'm bound to have said in another part of the video, because obviously I've got to record these bits all at different times, it feels so small. Now I'm going to put this is a standard 570 that you all saw in my 400th video that you all thought was Kepler. It's just me playing a sneaky trick, because obviously I couldn't break NDA. But if you put that, so you've got the 680 in front and then the 570 behind it. Now bearing in mind that the 570 is smaller than the 580, you can kind of get a gist for why, because I thought it was like the 670 or the 660 that had arrived, because the card just turned up out the blue. Wasn't expecting it. And yeah, the size really shocked me. Now I'm going to put, this is a 560. Now obviously it is a bit bigger than the 560, but it was the fact that it was it felt, even when the first time I got hold of it, it felt different, like smaller to the 570 even, which was what was, it really threw me when this first arrived. So anyway, that's the size comparisons out of the way. So you've seen it there with the 560 in front and the 570 behind. And now to have a good look at the card. First other thing really for me that stood out was the fact that the 6-pin PCI Expresses, there's only 2. I was expecting an 8 on one of these, but it's just because of the low power draw of this card. The power draw on this thing is ridiculously low, so that's why there's only 2 6-pins. But obviously they're stood apart from each other. Something that may cause a few people issues is that the clips for the PCI Express are both on the inside, not both on the outside. So especially when you've got one already fitted in the bottom, trying to get your finger in to unclip the top one can be a little bit tough. So yeah, that's something I've noticed already. Next thing that I noticed is the fan. It felt really, really small. And I have to admit, I was worried it was going to be loud, but as you'll see later on in the testing, it's far from loud. It's so quiet. Right, so it's obviously this is an what we call an OEM sample. This is an unbranded sample, straight from Nvidia, no stickers or anything like that. So yeah, it's just a normal sample. A lot of people ask me, oh, where can I just get a plain one? Well, sometimes some retailers pick them up and kind of call them their own. But as a rule of thumb, for a quick answer, the answer is you can't get them. You always end up with a branded card. The first batch of the Nvidia cards, or sorry, the first batch of 680s that come out from the vendors are all going to be the same as this with stickers on anyway. The only difference is that you'll get like slight BIOS tweaks. And different stickers and sort of like bundle packages and warranty and stuff, so that's worth considering when you purchase these. You're only really paying for the box and the warranty, so that's, you know, something that you should all consider. Around the back we've got 2 DVIs, then a HDMI and then a DisplayPort, and it does support, I'm told, 4 screens out the box as well. I've not tested it with multiple screens yet, but the all the image work and everything that I've seen from Nvidia shows triple screens and then with an extra one above, and it was like a surround game being played, but then with like a desktop stroke, kind of like an email client kind of thing, so that you could still run your surround game in, but then still be able to keep an eye on like your desktop and stuff as well, which is quite funky. Other thing is 2 SLI ports, so that we know we're going to be able to quad SLI this in the future. The back of the PCB actually looks quite plain really when you think about it. There's not a humongous amount going on there, is there? I mean, there's a lot of big kind of real estate gaps where there's not even a solder point. So that's also something worth noting. I quite like the GeForce GTX logo on the side. I think that's pretty funky. But other than that, guys, that is our first up-close look together of the 680. I think what we need to do now is get it in the system and start doing some testing. Right then, my lovelies, on to the 3D Mark results, the first of the benchmarks. I've started doing it this way recently and it seems to work quite well. So on the left hand side we've got a stock 7970 straight out the box with the standard test rig. On the right hand side we've got the stock 680 out the box on the same test rig. So exactly the same rig, no difference, just the cards. And you can see that we get 8,205 for this 7970 and then 9,249 for the 680. So we get about 1,000 points extra. Sometimes you can kind of put that down to the physics differences, because I never disable it, I literally just run the programs. So we could say that was a physics difference. But we can move on quickly now. And if we have a look at this one, this is the X score for 3D Mark 11 on both of these, and you can see that the score narrows down a little bit. There's about 400 points difference. We've got 2763 for the 7970 and then 3185 for the 680. Moving on quickly again, we move on to 3D Mark Vantage. So we get 36585 for the 7970. That's with a 34,042 GPU score. Moving on to the 680, we get 37,712. And that's with 35,352 on the GPU score. So about 1,300 extra points. Now you can see that there's only 1 point difference between the CPU score. So you can see it's on the same bench rig, the same problems. Literally the only difference in score there is that you get 1,300 extra on the GPU score, on the P score for the 680. We move on again. I know this is just a lot of screenshots, but it means we can rattle through it. And it saves me having to keep stopping the camera and stuff. Move on to the X score. And then we've got 17,399 for the GPU score on the 7970. And then 19,025 for the GPU score on the 680. CPU scores again are just so close. But basically that gives us about 1,600 extra points GPU score wise for the 680. Now what I'm going to do is we're going to move on to some games now, because although the benchmarks here were a little different, the thing is when it comes to games, as I'll explain in the conclusion, is obviously I can't show you 7970's 680, but the difference in the games is just minimal. There's nothing between them when it actually comes to frames per second. The only time that the 680 ever really pulls in front is with these benchmarks. So I don't want to. So I'm saying it to be clear. Yes, it does pull ahead in these benchmarks, but when it comes down to the real nitty-gritty of frames per second and actually being used in game, there's nothing between them at all. It's so close, it's ridiculous. But it does look rather tidy, sat there on our bench rig. Obviously I can finally show you. I'll just stick the camera up. The bench rig, as ever, is Asus Rampage 4 Extreme. Yeah, we've turned the little fan off. Then we've got Corsair H100 with Noctua Focus Flow NFF12 fans. We've got Corsair GTX680 memory running at 2133. There's AX 1200 watt power supply where all these lovely sexy cables disappear off down to. And that's all you really need to know. And the good thing is that the CPU, sorry, is a 3960X running at 4.6 gigahertz, 46 multiplier, 100 bus. And that was the same on both of the tests. We've not overclocked the card or anything, so everything's nice and fair. This is why I always try and use the same kit. I don't like to swap and change too often, because it just skews the results. Yeah, we'll move on to the games now, and then obviously get everything wrapped up at the end in the conclusion.
twister.
congratulations if you made it this far. You've made it to the conclusion. You're obviously actually interested in your hardware. So, right, we're going to say the award, and then as ever I will then explain why. Gold award, without a doubt in my mind. But it's kind of complicated because it's kind of strange. What we need to bear in mind is that, right, basically the best way that I can explain the 680 is it's not a revolution, it's an evolution. And by that what I mean is they've evolved the original Fermi. So we've brought the Fermi in the first stage, which was the 400 series, which was a bit loud and a bit hot and all that kind of stuff. They give it a bit of polish and they made the 500 series, which was epic. Moving on to the 600 series, they've done the same again. It's using less power, it's cooler, it's a shitload quieter with that cooler, it's brilliant. They've basically added even more polish to it. The thing is it's so close to the 7970, it's unreal. All the kind of hype and stuff that was floating around online has been, as far as I'm concerned, pretty unfounded. When you look at the benchmarks, it is a little bit better than stock 7970 in the benchmarks. But most of you will say where it counts in the games, it's like they're the same card. You could practically call this the Nvidia 7970 in games. It literally is within a margin of error either way every time. And by that what I mean, if we'd have tested the 7970 3 times, the difference in each of the results kind of fit in with the difference in each of the results that we would have got with the 680 as well. It's so close, it's unreal. Now I've postponed making the end of this video, and today, and what are we now? It's now Wednesday afternoon. Today I got my email from Nvidia telling me the price, and it's 429 quid, so it's actually coming in cheaper than a lot of the 7970s were at launch. There was one of the retailers that I deal with, Aria, recently put a 7970 up at 39999. I think it was an MSI one. So they're very, very closely matched, and this is it's a crazy time because we've got 2 cards, one from AMD, one from Nvidia, and there's nothing between them. There literally isn't anything between them. If you ignore power draw, because this thing does not draw any power anymore, and we're talking what Nvidia say 190 watts at full load, and I'd be happy to go along with that, although we don't do the power testing on this. Although I should do, it's something I should start doing. But there literally isn't anything between them. As far as the fanboys are concerned, you're going to have the AMD saying, oh, I one's better. You're going to have the Nvidia saying, oh, I one's better. No, boys, they're practically the same. Really isn't anything. It's an epic time to be a kind of an enthusiast. But the problem is, it may be an epic time to be an enthusiast, but you need to be an enthusiast that's earning a fair bit of money, because a 429 quid is still a lot of money for a graphics card. The cooler on this is chuffing awesome, and I mean amazing. It's the best Nvidia cooler to date as far as I'm concerned. What they did with the 500 series is they do run a little bit warmer, that's fair enough, but they're a shitload quieter, to the point where this is so much quieter than a 7970, it's embarrassing. And this is a reference cooler versus a reference cooler, I might add. It's epic. I love it. I was a big fan of the original 500 series coolers. This, they've taken it a notch further. It's brilliant. I was really worried when it first turned out that fan was so much smaller. I was like, oh no, it's going to be spinning faster, it'll be louder. But nope. It's quiet. And one of the things you need to remember as well is I use this, I test them on an open test bench for a reason. And that's so, especially when it comes to noise, I can tune right into it because there's nothing muffling it. So a lot of you will say, oh, it's not going to be that loud when it's in my case. I don't really care. I'm giving you a worst case scenario. A lot of cases have got loads of mesh on the side of them. So it's the same kind of thing. Not everyone's got theirs in a completely soundproof box. But yeah, not a worry. Another thing that I find kind of strange with this is its size, and the fact that it's still only got 2 6x8 pins. Now, this is all speculation at the moment, but one of the things that's going round in my head, and now this literally is just going round in my head, I've got nothing to substantiate it other than me speculating. The card's very short. And it's not a lot quicker than the 580 was, and I mean not a lot at all. I was expecting a little bit more of a jump. We were impressed that the 7970 come in and it was a bit quicker than the 580. But for Nvidia to bring this out and it only be, you know, kind of around the performance of the 7970, it's not what I was expecting. And now in my head, what I'm thinking is the fact that card's quite short. It's only got 2x 6-pin power. It's so close to the 580 already. I don't know whether there's going to be something that's going to come in above this. And I don't mean the twin core kind of, you know, 2 GPU card. Something inside me is telling me that we may have another single cord card come out later than this. There was a bit of speculation about like a GTZ kind of like 685 kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? It was all kind of just speculation. But now the card's here, I honestly think that we may have another single core card come above this. Because when you think about it, if this is so close to the 580 already, where have maybe this is going to be something that's going to replace they say this is replacing the 580, but if you put the other cards in below this, so say for example, say if they call them this, but if they become the 670 and the 660, they're not going to be that much quicker than their, you know, previous models either. So again, all speculation, don't know where it's going, but it takes nothing away from the fact that if this is just their tuned 580, sorry for hitting the mic, I've got an itch, it's epic. Really, really is good. Really, really is good. So yeah, it's kind of a weird one because I know there's going to be many of you are instantly going to be jumping on this and expecting it to absolutely annihilate the 7970. Well, the sad thing is it hasn't, but it's also kind of a good thing in a way as well, in the fact that it kind of levels the playing field a bit. And I actually really like this now, because gone are the days where we're going to be able to have those fanboy arguments. No doubt someone on the AMD team is going to just turn around or the AMD fanboy go, oh, it's just because the 7970 was so epic in the first place. Well, if the 7970 was so epic in the first place, why did it take them so long to overtake the 580? There's lots of ways you can spin it. The way it is at this present moment in time, there's the best single core cards from both camps are just so evenly matched. There's nothing between them. So the only real thing to say is you buy what you want. It really does come down to that. If you've got the money, if you want AMD, go AMD. If you want Nvidia, go Nvidia. They both support multi-screens. That's another epic feature that they've brought to this now. The 680 can support 4 screens out the box, so you can have your surround gaming and then an extra one for like MSN or your email or whatever. So it supports 4 screens, which was something they were massively lacking before. So they've kind of ticked that box. It's got more video memory. I proved in my testing with the 7970 that if you're running a single screen, the 2 GB is more than enough, and I do mean more than enough. There's not really a lot I can say about it. I wish there was going to be this big shock horror and we were going to be, you know, shouting about, you know, it was so much faster and stuff. It's really not. It's a bit like the Intel TikTok. They've just polished it. They've made it smaller. It uses less power. It's more refined. It's quieter. They've kind of just given it a really good polish. I'm not so sure that polish is going to be, you know, worth all that extra money. But I know there's going to be queues upon queues of you guys out there just falling over yourselves to go and get them. If this is the price that the top end single core cards are going to cost nowadays, we're just going to have to get used to it. But it does, like I said, it does leave me pondering where Nvidia are going to go, not only if there will be a card above this, but at the same time where they're going to go with the cards below it, because like I said, it is already so close to the card it's meant to be replacing. So yeah, a lot of speculation. It's a lot for us to ponder on. Obviously this is the reference kind of OEM version that I got direct from Nvidia. So we will have like the brand cards later on, and the custom coolers and all that kind of thing. This is definitely a first in a lot of videos that are going to be coming, as I'm sure you are aware with all the 7000 series cards that I've covered. So yeah, it could be interesting times ahead. But I'm going to leave the video here now, and it's now time for you guys to subscribe, comment, let me know what you think, do what you do, share, like, +1, all that kind of stuff. I've got a grin on my face. So yeah, it's not as good as a lot of you may have thought, but it's still, you know, it's still a bloody good card, and it's actually kind of made things a little bit easier for us guys on the other side of the camera. But I've thoroughly enjoyed testing this. Yeah, it's a bit of a weird one because, like I said, it's not been the kind of it's not set the world on fire like a lot of you may have thought. Yeah, it's still left us with a bit of a grin on our face, and I've really enjoyed playing it. I know Mr. S has enjoyed playing with it over the last few days. That he's just been constantly playing games on it. To be perfectly honest with you, that's all he's done. Just literally sat there playing games on it, just continuously. And that's one of the good things about it. Is sometimes with stuff like that, especially when he's been playing it a long time, you do start to hear the fan spin up. And this thing has just stayed so quiet. If it wasn't for the noise of the games behind me, I honestly wouldn't have known he was playing it, other than like the tappity tap tap on the keyboard. It really is such a good cooler. So there you go, 429 quid. You may even be able to find them cheaper, because that's literally just the kind of like the basic price that Nvidia have sent out. Obviously there will be versions above that, but with the reference ones that go out, they're literally the only difference between the cards is going to be your warranty and what comes in the box, because all of the original ones are kind of Nvidia ones with stickers on. So kind of bear that in mind as well. You don't necessarily need to go and spend a shitload just buying a specific brand. But obviously if you're used to a specific brand, you like that, you want, you know, said brand in your case, then you crack and lock on. But we will be covering these a lot more. I've got quite a few little bits and bobs planned for you over the next few weeks. But for now at least, I need to get off there, because I was ages ago I could have finished this, but I need to get off the camera now. But for now at least, this is tiny Tom Logan with another video for you, the gold award winning Nvidia GTX680 that we can finally talk about, because this thing's been here for 3 weeks. Out.